This video is on qualitative data generally, particularly sampling in qualitative research. Sampling is whatever portion of a population or component of a phenomenon that's being investigated in a research study. The researcher needs to define a set of criteria or attributes that the people they're studying need to conform to and needs to be applied to all participants, or at least potential participants in a study. You can have criterion-based sampling or purposeful sampling. Purposive sampling is what we call it in qualitative research, or quantitative research, but in qualitative research we call it purposeful. I realize that's weird, and it's one of those things where I don't know why they do it. They don't make me in charge, so I guess we just go with it. But we can also see things like snowball sampling, quota sampling, or convenience sampling in qualitative research, and those will often require the same kinds of criterion or purposeful approach to determining who is included in the qualitative data sample. Sampling should be either comprehensive, so that'll be all relevant cases are included and examined in a research study. But this kind of sampling is extremely expensive and typically not possible, or at least impractical. Comprehensive sampling may occur in situations where you have a small classroom, and so you have 15 people, you can get through that relatively quickly and relatively inexpensively. However, if you have 500 people, that's not going to be something that is possible to sample every individual, let alone if you add zeros to that. So what some people will do is try to do a maximum variation sample, and that will have some kind of underlying trait that then all participants share, yet every other trait is as far apart as possible on whatever spectrum you're looking at. So you have a wide range of cases that are purposely selected, so all types of cases exist along one or more dimensions. So for instance, if you were doing a study on collegiate Hispanic males in the United States, you probably would want to include those of the immigrants from any country that would fall into the Hispanic sphere. So you'd probably have some Cuban immigrants, Mexican Americans, Brazilian, Argentine, Peruvian, so on and so forth. But they're all Hispanic individuals, and so you would be able to integrate them into your study and be able to say, I have maximum variation. I have the broadest possible sample of collegiate Hispanic males. So you're looking for those commonalities between their experiences because they are Hispanic males and not because of all the other possible explanations. On the other extreme, you can try to get a homogeneous sample, a small sample that is uniform in one trait or one attribute. So you're selecting them for intensive study. And that may be something like sampling the population of Japanese immigrants in Colorado Springs, or sampling the Morgridge College of Education students who were enrolled in the higher ed program at the master's level. You have a homogeneous group of students. Yes, there is other aspects of their experience that are diverse, but if you're only asking about academic experiences within NCE, then you could consider that a homogeneous sample, because at the end of the day, people are people, and there is no truly homogeneous sample of individuals. Another approach is to look for extreme cases. So you're looking at the outliers and trying to figure out, okay, what's going on with those people in the extremes. Oftentimes, extreme case sampling will occur after a quantitative analysis. So you've done the quantitative statistics, you know what the normal distribution looks like, but you say, hey, there's this clump that's way outside of the normal distribution. What's going on there? Why are they so far outside the distribution of everyone else? And so you'd be looking specifically for those extreme cases. In qualitative sampling, there are typical cases, and that's the kind of average typical case that you're going to find, and you're looking specifically for individuals who are typical, who are average on whatever trait is of interest. There's also critical cases. Critical cases are selected because they're believed to be particularly important for one reason or another. Negative cases are basically the opposite of the typical case. They're cases where your expectations did not match reality. They are not falling in line with what you expected or what you thought would be the case, and so they merit further investigation because they don't fit, and you kind of need to know why they don't fit. There's also opportunistic sampling, in which you're collecting data and choosing important cases based on what is available and what is proximate to you. So that oftentimes in academia means research with undergrads. They are always the go-to opportunistic sample because we have a lot of them and they're constantly refreshed every year with a new batch of um, students coming in. You can also have mixed purposeful sampling, in which you're mixing and matching these different sampling strategies to get to some kind of optimal mix or optimal match so that you can more fully explain what's going on in the qualitative data. So in order to describe samples in qualitative research, you need this kind of list, which probably sounds pretty familiar considering we just talked about these. Comprehensive, maximum variation, homogeneous, extreme case, typical case, critical case, negative case, opportunistic sample. All of those are words that are used to describe the sample. But if you are reading a qualitative research article, they may or may not use these terms specifically and explicitly. And that's because qualitative data collection, qualitative data analysis, all involves so much nuance and so much responding to what the data says and what is present in the available information rather than preconceived notions. So oftentimes they won't describe the sample like that, but they should, and we should be using those terms when describing a qualitative research study.